One day later, it's all smiles in UConn Nation. You're Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Little housekeeping, my YouTube support has been amazing. I'd love to have all my subscribers downloading the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. It's equally as important for helping the channel and Locked On UConn audience grow. So if you can, do me two quick favors. First, click that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen. Then head over to Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Hit that follow button. This way, you'll never miss a moment of Locked On UConn. And man, is there ever a time to make sure you're locked in on UConn with all the news that's been circulating with UConn just in the last 24 to 48 hours. If you're listening in your car, please drop us a 5-star review. Of course, after you drive, good reviews trigger referrals for similar shows where we can get some new audience members who are interested in more UConn content. And a special shout out to my everydayers. Thanks so much for diving into this new UConn content, spreading the love of UConn hoops. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Well, we have a special guest today from BigEASTBarroom. Let's unmute his mic and bring him on the stage. Tyler Cassidy, welcome to the show, man.
Hey,
I don't even have a question for you to start. Like usually we do a cold open and we have a question for you, but as a Husky fan, you said it pre-show, it's a great day or a great time to be a Husky fan. Can you just give me your thoughts initially from when you found out? It was probably, I don't know if you got the Woj notification today or if it was somebody else. I was actually listening or was on the Stores Central app, which is the NIL platform that people use for UConn, and started to get some word that was circulating. And then lo and behold, Woj drops the bomb. Where were you when you found out the news?
I was so little housekeeping, teaching, graduation day. All my kids went home, so I was actually in a quiet classroom on Spaces listening, and I was refreshing Twitter like crazy. I heard when Dan Hurley walked in and high-fived Tom Moore, which was a big tweet that went out. And then it came across, and the reaction is he picked us. I mean, this guy was offered the most iconic or second most iconic franchise in NBA history, and he decided to stay in Connecticut. I mean, he picked us. I don't know. That was my first reaction, that he wants to be here. You can get in the logistics of if the Laker job is better than UConn right now or not, but he chose to stay in Connecticut, and it just is it's a really weird, feeling of just, you almost feel flattered that he chose us.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for me is, I'll be like full disclosure, like I was a huge LeBron James fan 20 years ago. When he first came out, I was all on the LeBron train, choo-choo, just like dude was amazing, was going to revolutionize basketball. As time has gone on, I've kind of soured on LeBron because I've never truly, even though I grew up in Meriden where you live, I truly never had a NBA team. So I'm not a Celtics fan. I'm not a Knicks fan. I'm not even a Bulls fan like a lot of people were growing up, right? As a Jordan guy. I just I loved UConn basketball and I liked the NBA. So I kind of have to believe that the LeBron James effect on this is a big reason why he didn't take the job. I mean, he's the 6'8", 270-pound elephant in the room, right? I mean, he cast a huge shadow. Do you agree with that, or is that too simplistic?
I agree with what some of you're saying. I mean, I think the only way Hurley's going to take a job in the NBA is if he gets a level of control that you don't see from first-year coaches.
Yeah,
he's going to want to be able to control, the player movement. He's going to want to be able to control, the X's and O's. And when you have LeBron James on your team, even a 39-year-old LeBron James, he's bigger than, I don't want to say he's bigger than the team, but LeBron kind of is. And so, yeah, I think that just the control, I'm not sure that the Lakers would ever give him that control, again, being that franchise that is, so storied. But I heard Anthony Davis was a big part of this, the coaching search at
Sure.
least. I think that would have been a better angle for the Lakers if he can stay healthy. Go with Anthony Davis.
No, you're right. And I think that's an interesting one too. It's like, but is Anthony Davis much better than LeBron from like a diva perspective? Like he doesn't play much.
Yeah.
They're like best friends. LeBron is handpicked who comes to the Lakers year after year after year. And I made this point on Friday and through the weekend. What makes this Lakers team iconic is no longer iconic anymore. And unfortunately, the Celtics have continued their status going forward. But the Celtics did it because they allowed a Brad Stevens to come in and build and continue to build. I don't think the Lakers were willing to do that. And so I think Dan is saying nice things like, it was a compelling case. But I think if you gave him truth serum, he would come back and said, there's just no way I could have took that job.
But Mark, I think because we had DM'd, and I know you shouted this out earlier.
Yeah.
We had talked about how the NBA just changes way too quickly. The Lakers won a championship 4 years ago. We call it a Mickey Mouse championship, call it whatever you want. That's 4 years ago where we would have sat here and said, well, the Celtics haven't continued on this path, the Lakers have. It's just, that's how quickly it evolves. We're in Connecticut. Dan Hurley, he could have a losing season for 5 years in a row before anybody even considers saying a negative word about him. It doesn't matter. He's a god in UConn. He'll have the statue built next to Jim Calhoun eventually. The NBA changes way too quickly. I don't think that's very appealing, other than if you just want the challenge and the financial safety.
Tyler, you and I are of the same brain because we messaged, but I said the exact same thing to my father. I said, I didn't even use Dan Hurley. I said, just take Tom Izzo at Michigan State. He's won one title in 20 years. They love him. He's deified, and he's not going anywhere. One title, one. He hasn't won multiple. And Dan Hurley, if Dan Hurley lost, like you said, if he lost from now until the end of time, they'll still build him a statue.
I agree.
It's the NBA is not what it's made out to be. It's a great challenge, but maybe the new challenge is to do something that no one's ever done someone hasn't done since UCLA in the 60s and 70s. Yeah, I think that's what Dan's brain is going right now. That's the new mantra is, back to business. So we'll talk about maybe there's some of the deciding factors that went into this. We kind of talked about that. So we're going to jump into the 24-25 roster. I wonder about Tyler's thoughts about the new guys coming in and the transfers. Haven't had a chance to get his thoughts on that coming up after this. All right, LinkedIn. When you're hiring for a small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why I use LinkedIn Jobs. And I remember searching for my latest team member back when I owned my own business. It was such a breeze with LinkedIn Jobs. They have the tools to help you find the right professionals faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. It connects you with professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job. LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. If you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. Plus, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours on LinkedIn. I experienced it firsthand. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Check out LinkedIn Jobs today. All right. Let's bring Tyler back in. Get this LinkedIn off the screen. By the way, if you love the podcast, you see the ticker, subscribe now on YouTube, on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We'd really appreciate the love. Also, Big East Barroom. Please subscribe. This is a dual podcast in the respective. I love the Big East Barroom, and so should you. Do you have anything you want to plug right now before we get into the roster?
No, Ryan and I have taken the summer a little easier right now, and we're gonna get back into it. But Big East Barroom on Twitter and anywhere you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple. The support helps us a lot, and we have some big things planned for this season, so we're excited.
I love it. Maybe I get to see you at the Big East tournament this year. That's the plan. The Big East tournament, and fingers crossed, the Final Four.
Yes, sir.
Cool, man. So I have been asking people about this. Anytime I've had people on, we already kind of went through the deciding factors of why he stayed. loyalty, not maybe the job itself wasn't as appealing as he initially thought. I'll ask you one question before we get into the roster. Do you think that he went there with an open mind and realized, I'm not ready for this?
So, Mark, I have a little tidbit. So I went to everyone's talking about that coach's banquet, right? That he went to on Wednesday. So actually the night before he was at the Franciscan nuns banquet. So I was in attendance for that and got to shake his hand and everything. Calhoun spoke. Dan Hurley was so not Dan Hurley to me. He was like distracted. He repeatedly said, I did not prepare a speech. I was going to write it while I was up here. He got up there and was like, he really didn't know what to say. It was, he's in Connecticut. He just won back-to-back championships. So I do believe that, he ended the speech with, we're going to go for the three-peat and got a standing ovation. He could have said anything and got a standing ovation. But the amount of distractedness that I saw from him, like even at the time I turned, because I went with my mom and I turned her and I was like, he didn't write one thing down. Like he didn't write any, he had to give like a 10-minute speech and he didn't write one thing down and he really didn't. So to me now, when we learned more things and maybe this is confirmation bias, I think he was extremely interested or at least wanted to try to go into an open mind and distracted by this Lakers job for the last week. That was last Tuesday. So that's about when we found out we got the Woj bomb Wednesday morning.
That's a great tidbit. I wonder, listen, I don't know if you feel this way when you have a secret and you can't tell somebody. That's the way that reads to me, right? It's not that he wants to be disingenuous, but he knows he can't kind of talk, like he's like itching to tell someone about it, but he can't. So it debilitates your ability to be socially, normal.
Yeah, he was very frank at one point. Tom Moore introduced him, and Moore was saying, that first team that he had, he's like, Hurley could have made them all transfer and whatever. And then Hurley got up there and was like, I should have made them all transfer. They sucked. And it was just it was very Hurley where he was being frank, but it was just like it just was like it just came across kind of distracted and like, I just need to get through this.
Sure.
So I did think that was interesting, but I do think he went in with an open mind. I think he thought he owed it to himself to go into an open mind.
Yeah.
But I think you're right that when he saw the level of control LeBron has, the lack of organizational control he would have, and when the financials are not going to be wildly different, especially in that tax bracket in Los Angeles. I mean, he probably was like, well, what did he tell Carabin? If you're 50-50 on anything, you should do the thing. You should stay where you are. I mean, he probably sitting there going, no, this isn't right, although it's appealing.
Yeah, and I mean, even if he felt good about it, and he got assurances mean nothing. You know what I mean? Like you and I both know that regardless of your status as a employer or employee, if you go and you do a job and your employer thinks that it's substandard, regardless of what you think or what you were told at the beginning, they have the ultimate say. So, I mean, we've talked about this. If Frank Vogel can get fired 4 years after winning a title, Dan Hurley can certainly get fired after 2 years of being like, this is garbage. But here, no there. We don't have to worry about it anymore, right? He's back. He's in stores. Pretty cool stuff. Let's talk about the new guys coming in. Who are you most excited about?
For some reason, I think he's almost going under the radar. Liam McNeely is one of the top 15 players in the country transferring in. I mean, Stefan Castle was I think the 8th prospect last year, and I believe McNeely's 11th. I mean, we're talking about a Stefan Castle level recruit coming in. Maybe not the same skill set, but thought of in a similar ilk. I'm excited for McNeely to come in and make a difference right away. And there's a good chance he's a one and done too. Which you don't want to build a team around those, but it's nice that we have these recruits that want to come in. So Liam McNeely is my guy. I'm excited to be coming in, but I'm wildly excited for Jalen Stewart. If I'm talking about anybody he's going to be kind of new to the team, averaging 5 minutes a game last year.
For sure. I think what I'm most excited about is because I feel like most casual fans, and I sometimes hate to use that word because I feel like you never can really truly tell how much someone watches, but you can definitely tell how much someone knows about the sport when they talk about someone poorly who is got the traits, and they also have Dan Hurley and the staff's seal of approval, and that's Solo Ball. I think Solo is going to be a dynamic player for them, because I read into him, and I thought about this for a while. I don't know if you knew this, but he was 5 foot going into his freshman year of high school.
Wow.
Or 5'5" was like his, I think 5'5". So I'm giving the legend even more. But he was a short kid. Yeah. And he's 6'4" now. And he had a huge growth spurt from his freshman year to sophomore year. And one of the things I read about his scouting report coming out of high school was he still plays like he's 5'5". And that, to me, that speaks so much volume of the type of character this kid has. And he stuck around, and I've seen DMs and messages to some folks in the building that I kind of deal with on a regular basis now with Locked On UConn. And he's like, I'm not going anywhere. Like he even said if coach left, he was staying. Like he was one of the confirmations that like he was going to stick around if coach left. So I'm so excited to see what that kid can do. And the other one for me is Aiden Mahaney, because I think Aiden is kind of the Tristan Newton replacement. Not as big as Tristan, but a similar personality. I think it's kind of lazy to get him in with Joey Calcaterra because they're California kids. I think it's mostly because these guys were, 2-3 star recruits. Tristan was a 0-star recruit coming out of high school, but they produced in college just at a lower level. And this team saw something in them by playing against them. Mm-hmm. So those are the two guys that I'm super excited about.
So, Mark, we got to break down. I know it's way early in the offseason, but Hurley just agreed to stay. We have so many players on this team right now. I can't figure out how they're going to get the minutes to all these players.
Me either, man.
What's Jaden Ross going to do? Like, Jaden Ross just decided not to transfer as a 4-star recruit, and now you have Caravan in that position, Stewart at that position. Like, you have so many wings now. Like, it's –
Do you think –
good
well,
problem to have.
Great problem to have. Let's take like 2 minutes and just talk about. I did a whole, not a whole show, but probably would say 3/4 of a show on this a week ago. This is pre Dan Hurley stuff. So I thought all was right in the world. We're gonna coast through the off season. Let's talk lineup combinations, right? Yeah. And one of them was, what if you do a majority of your minutes when you're playing a team that doesn't have a dominant big, and you have Alex at the 5. And then just sprinkle in wings everywhere. And you can choose. If Ahmad Noel is having a fantastic game, you ride the hot hand there. If Haas is playing great, you ride the hot hand there. If you want to do Aiden Mahaney at the point because he can handle that, you ride that. And just you literally could put Liam McNeely at the 2. You could put Jalen Storr at 3. You could put Jaden at the 4. One combination of just if one of them is a 40% 3-point shooter. What do you think about that?
You broke up a little bit at the end there, Mark. But,
I was just gonna say, like, you basically do. I called it the Golden State Light, right? The Draymond Green, but Draymond can't shoot, so Alex can. So you give me Alex Caravan as a 40% 3-point shooter, and then the rest of the wings as fast, athletic, but they can also shoot, all 40% 3-point shooters. Because even if you put Ahmad in the game, we don't know if he's proven that at the college level yet, obviously, but he was a plus 3-point shooter in high school as well.
Mm-hmm. I think Hurley's earned the benefit of the doubt that he's going to figure it out. But, man, if this was not Hurley, I'd be sitting here going, someone's going to get pissed off about playing time eventually.
It's true.
Like, I would just be like, you convinced Hassan Diarra after winning back-to-back national championships to come back. You must have told him that he pretty much had the keys to the offense. Then you bring in Aiden Mahaney, who's an all WCC player. I mean, like, what did you tell Mahaney? Like, and you bring in McNeely, and he's, a top 15 player in the country, recruit coming in, but you have people at the 3 and the 4 and the 2. I mean, it's a great problem to have. It's just so many good players.
I wonder if they'll do something similar to, and I hate to even bring his name up, but he did have one pretty successful year at Kentucky with John Calipari. But they had that year where they had that incredible team. It was 2012, right, with Anthony Davis at the 5. and every one of those guys played. They had 10, McDonald's All-Americans, whatever you want to call it, and all 10 of them played. So maybe he does something like that. And then the guys that are kind of SOL are Youssef and Isaiah Abraham, but you can't please everyone.
I know.
So
it just surprised me that nobody, like no one transferred, like even Youssef, like he's got to see the writing on the wall that he's the third big again on this team right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. What I heard from that was he's kind of like a vibes guy, and he's the type of guy that is going to 100% fight to play because he's competitive, or else he wouldn't be on this team. But you kind of have to have those guys who are like, that were like Apostolos. Like Apostolos is a good player. He's going to get some run at Richmond. I don't know how much he's going to play. Maybe he plays a lot. Not everyone's going to be the PTP, or as Dick Vitale used to say, right? So I don't know. It's a great problem to have. You're right. Maybe we should do a whole show just bringing people in and saying give me your lineup. Like, what do you think? And we grade it or something. I don't know. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, it'll be good. And you got to think that Hassan and Samson have some run on this team. So I'm interested to see how that all works out.
Well, before we get to the next break, I have to ask, and because we had this Dan Hurley news, maybe people are kind of sick of watching Fox Sports and ESPN, but are you watching it on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find it on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Before we get to the next segment, I want to ask you one quick question. I've asked people this in terms of, you said about Hassan and like it's a good problem to have with all these different roster combinations. Do you think the two questions that I have in my mind, or actually three, you're super excited about Jalen Stewart and Liam McNeely. Who starts between those two?
I think you have to give it to Stewart. I think that the way that Hurley talked about Stewart and the way that he didn't want him to transfer at the end of the year, Hurley repeatedly said the T word. He said tampering repeatedly. He was like, as long as no one tampers with Stewart, I think, I'm just trying to read some tea leaves, that he made Stewart some assurances that Stewart was going to get some big playing time. His family was unhappy with his playing time and vocal about it on Twitter for a little bit. I know not all of them, but some of them. My hope is that I think Stewart has earned the opportunity, but I also am. Liam McNeely was probably able to start on a lot of teams. I would start Stewart, but and I think that's what they're going to go with. But I wonder how long that lasts if McNeely's really balling out off the bench.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I'm curious. I think I'm with you. I'm with you on that. But I can be talked into something else too. So at this point, I just want to get to the season. But we're going to play a game, a Husky game with Tyler coming up after this. If I can get to the button, there it is. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more. You can bet it all on FanDuel right now. New customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200. You can use it to bet on everything from the Finals MVP. Right now, it's Jaylen Brown to who's going to hit one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, let's bring back Tyler to the show. Let's get FanDuel off. Who do you think is the Finals MVP right now if you had to pick?
Probably Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. You can go Drew. I think we may can go Kristaps Porzingis, but isn't he hurt now? He's out for.
Did he get hurt? I know he was limping at the end of the game. I didn't see the follow-up on it.
A buddy of mine is huge in the NBA and says that that's the only reason why the Mavs have a shot. So I don't know, but I think the smart money. It would have been smart to go with Jaylen Brown from the start. He was plus 600 for the MVP. So. If you can get a time machine, it's probably a lot worse odds now.
Tatum can't shoot right now.
Yeah, no, I think it's such an interesting series. But anyway, back to UConn. We've been playing this game with people. Who do you want? And you can pick. Since you are a UConn fan, I want you to rack your brain. Any coach, any player, ever in history, you can have saw them play. You could just know how good they were. Whatever, could be just about their personality. I'm going to give you a couple scenarios. You decide who you want, right?
Yep.
So my wife and I just bought a minivan. In 2 days, we are going to New York, traveling with 2 children and
God
ourselves.
bless you.
Thank you. So a minivan carries 8 people, but when we're talking about basketball people, it's likely only going to carry about 4 guys. So you have 1 guy shotgun next to you, you're driving, and you got 3 guys in the back, one in each row, if you will. So who are the 4 guys to fit your 5-person minivan? Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you just fine now.
Didn't click anything and then went on mute. I'm sorry about that.
You good, brother?
Klingon is sitting shotgun.
Okay.
Because, 1, he needs to because he can't be
That's right.
sitting in the back. 2, I feel like he'd be good like on music control, like full aux cord. 3, I feel like he's kind of just chill. Like he's not going to be like yelling if we're too close to another car or something. I'm big into Donovan Klingon being sitting shotgun. After that, if I'm going to wrap my brain, my favorite player in UConn history, which is incredibly recency bias, I love Adama Sanogo.
Love it.
He's one of the more positive players, it seems. Obviously, some of this is just I'm basing on what their persona is.
Yeah.
I don't know them. And I also want Andre Jackson there because Andre Jackson's like one of those people. He's going to do whatever he can to make sure that the van gets to where it needs to go. You need me on snack duty, I got you. He's that team player. I need Kemba in the car at some point just because I need to hear stories about that 2011 team.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm going to go with stories, I want Kemba and Ray Allen sitting there giving me stories in the middle, just back and forth. So Klingon sits shotgun. Give me Ray and Kemba right behind there. And then in the back 2 seats, Vibes and for the van are Adama and Andre Jackson.
I love that, man. That's a good group. One of the 2 people when I had this with Ricky Moore, he mentioned he wanted Rashad Anderson and Khalid El-Amin. Those were 2 of his guys. Khalid is still his boy. He's like, that's my brother. He's like, I'd love to have him shotgun. That's my guy. So I was like, listen, I love Khalid El-Amin. I was like, I'm built like Khalid El-Amin. I'm a short, stocky guy. That's my dude. Like that's who I relate to. All right. So now I mentioned this is pre-show. Us old guys, we play pickleball now.
Yes.
If you could play pickleball and you could pick one player to play pickleball with, who would it be?
So, I mean, I'm familiar with pickleball, but are we playing for a prize? Are we playing for just, okay, then Dan Hurley.
You're picking Dan, huh?
He's old enough to where he's probably in that pickleball age range. He's competitive enough where we're winning that. And I mean, 3, to be coached by Dan Hurley in anything, that's probably the only skill I would ever have is pickleball that he could coach me in. And maybe I could make him proud a little bit. And if not, I'll have you
just run sprints.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It just make you run sprints.
Yeah. No, but I think if we're playing for money, Dan Hurley, because I want to win.
I love that. I got 2 more for you.
Yep.
Let's go. I've been changing this to, instead of like a foxhole, I've been saying, who do you want as your security guard? Like who's going to protect you? Like you're walking down the street, and this guy is your security guard. He's a UConn guy.
First name that jumped out right away, Tyrese Martin. Tyrese Martin to me was always about, like, if there was Andre was starting to mouth off or Whaley was starting to say something, Tyrese was always kind of lurking in the background. Like, I'm the enforcer. I'm not going to be in your face, but if it gets to me, it's over. So I'm immediately going Tyrese Martin because I feel like I would feel secure with him. He's 6'6". And I feel like he would do a good job and that nobody would get too close if he was my bodyguard.
I love when there's a new person. That's the first Tyrese Martin. But also you have to remember us old folks. I use Torino Walker.
Yep.
People have said Jeff Adrian.
Oh, Jeff Adrian's a good one.
Sam Calhoun picked Hashim Thabit just because of how big he is. Like he would almost be like, you couldn't see Sam. He was like, I just walked behind him and no one would see me.
Yeah.
That was a funny answer. So that's a good one. Okay. Last one. You have a golf foursome. You're playing. This is just for fun. You're not doing a scramble. You're not playing for money. You have 3 slots. It's yourself and 3 UConn people.
First name jumped in, Calhoun. Again, you're going out on the golf course. I want to see Jim Calhoun.
Yep.
And I think Calhoun golfs a little bit too. So that'd be a fun one. Now I'm trying to, let me think back. You know what? I think going out with like a Calhoun and some of his old players would be fun because then they'd get to start talking. So like Emeka Okafor, like if I'm going to take like the best player from certain teams, like that 04 team and, Emeka Okafor, I'm not sure about Ben Gordon. I know he's still fighting some stuff. And then I'm trying to think of like, I want to take someone like off that 11 team, but not Kemba. Like, do I want to take like, you want to know what? Give me Shabazz. And I just want to hear Shabazz, get out there on the course. And I didn't pick him for my car ride. So I'd like to hear those stories. I'm a big, I just want to get the stories and I'm not a great golfer. So I'm going to be picking up a few times and driving the cart.
I love it. Mine were Calhoun. You were spot on with me and Calhoun. I said Calhoun, Hurley, and I'm going Steve Peichel. Because I want all coaching. I want all the coaches, and it's also Calhoun's former player. Mm-hmm. So we can kind of reminisce about older school, new school. Those guys are coaching now too. So I think it would be a really interesting foursome just to kind of, I love coach speak. Like if I could watch.
You said Calhoun, Peichel, and who was the middle one?
Hurley. So it's myself and the three coaches.
I thought you might put Ollie out there and just see what all hell breaks loose with that.
he can come. There's five. Sometimes, you see guys go out there with 4 carts and there's 5 guys, You ever go to a golf course and there's all the old guys go out and there's just like a million carts.
Yep.
That could be the case. I mean, listen, I wish I'm Kevin Ollie. I loved Kevin Ollie. I remember when it was like Hollywood and all that stuff. I mean, look, it is what it is.
It was supposed to be fun.
It was supposed to be fun. And listen, I hope he does great in the NBA. That's all I can say, right? Well, before we jump, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's now available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto. For Tyler Cassidy of Big East Barroom, do you want to plug anything before we go?
Nope. Just follow us on Twitter and and subscribe, please, on Spotify and Apple. And Mark, you do a great job here, and I've enjoyed listening to you, and you've done a great job covering this last week, especially. I
appreciate you, man. Well, listen, I thought I was going to have to change this, but we don't have to change anything. You got to stay locked in, stay connected, make sure your toughness meter is always rising.
Yep.
And as always,
foot on gas.
That's right. As always, go Huskies.